Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Kiva's Place, the Kiva Murdoch Show and Podcast. I am so excited to have my guest that I have in our virtual studio tonight. We're going to dive into literacy and education. And we know that this has been a very traumatic and trying year this year, and we understand that education is very important. Matter of fact, is crucial to the future of our children. So I'm super excited to have my guest in the house tonight, and we're going to talk about it. But let me tell you first of all who she is, and then we're going to go ahead and get you acclimated to her. So my guest tonight is Michelle Person. She is a passionate educator with over 20 years of experience in education. In 2017, while searching for books for her youngest daughter, she was disappointed by her inability to find diverse multicultural characters that her daughter, as well as other students she serves, could identify with. So what did she do? She began writing as a way to fill that void. Her work took her into dozens of schools, meeting and coaching hundreds of teachers and parents. And it became very clear very quickly that the lack of diversity was an issue across all content areas in elementary education. And this is not anything new. This is a topic that we have touched on before. So I'm super excited to have Michelle here so we can dive a little bit deeper into that. So after our introduction, I will introduce to you no other than Miss Michelle Person. So you already know what to do. Go ahead and make yourself comfortable, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the ride because you are finally at home at Kiva's Place. So stay tuned.
Welcome to Kiva's Place, the Kiva Murdoch Show and Podcast. We hope that by the end of our show, you're left feeling empowered, motivated, and connected. So come on in the room. Grab your favorite drink. Sit back and enjoy the ride. Because you're finally at home at Kiva's Place.
And welcome back to Kiva's Place, the Kiva Murdoch Show and Podcast. So as promised, without further ado, I would like to introduce to you Miss Michelle Person. So come on in the room, Queen. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am so excited to have you, Michelle. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this particular segment with us.
No problem. It's my pleasure.
So tell our viewers a little bit more about you. I know I gave them a little bit of background on how your passion evolved around literacy, but tell us a little bit more about who Michelle Person is.
So Michelle Person is an educator who has been educating people for about officially 20 years now, 20 or so years. I've been in the classroom and I've worked at the building level as a building administrator. And what I have found is that although I am extremely passionate about education, I believe in it. I think it has the power to change lives. I also recognize that it is often misused. People, you can control the education you feed to a group of people, and it can dramatically change the output you get when you talk about that particular group of people. And so I have become very, very frustrated with the way education works. It is not all about education. Often it is about what works best for the people making the decisions. It's about what fits what policy. Worst case scenarios, it's about what contract boxes get checked, and what works best for grown people and not what works best for little people. And so that frustration with education after 20 some odd years has led me to kind of break off and begin to do my own thing to try to make a dent and share the education, the important education that I got in education for. I got in education to transform lives. I got into education because I wanted to make sure that our children had a strong foundation. And the further up in education I went, I just found that I just kept getting doors slammed and, being told, no, we can't do it like this, or we don't have the money for this. And so I'm like, I'm just gonna do it my way. And so just like Me Presents and my books and my curriculums and my training are me breaking down the door, because this information is there. It's important. I want to make sure it's out there, and I'm going to do it my way. So that's a little bit more about me.
I love that. Let me ask you this question. Diversity in education, and that has been a hot topic for several years, but maybe it's just me, but it appears to be now, since all of the movements with Black Lives Matters and all of that is more in the forefront now, not necessarily bridging the gap, but it seems as if, and correct me if I'm wrong, outside of looking in, it seems as if it's more politics involved in education now. And not only that, what is flooring me is that there's actually debate about taking certain things out of the curriculum, that has transpired in our history. And when I say history, I don't mean Black history as a whole, American history. So what's your thoughts on that?
First off, let's be clear. Politics has always been involved in education. Politics, I mean, I also have a podcast, and one of the issues that we talk about is the trends in education. And education is nothing but trends, and the trends are usually associated with what is important in politics at a specific time, right? So in the 70s, you had the open classroom model because we were coming off the 60s and the big love and everybody wants to be together. And that was a horrible idea, and it doesn't work. You took a whole bunch of kids, you threw them in a class, and you had people just all over the place, and it can work, I suppose, but that was a big thing, but it wasn't necessarily fueled by what was best in education. It was fueled by what was happening in our world. The 80s brought us mainstreaming, and we call it now inclusion. And there were cases brought against, political cases that were brought against because children weren't being educated. So that it all trickles down, right? And so, for the last couple of years, there's been a push to diversify education, be more inclusive. But, when you have people who don't understand the power of the vote and, want to claim that it doesn't matter which person you vote for because they're both evil, and don't understand that it's not just about the person that you put in the White House, it's about the people that you vote for at the local and state level, because they are the people creating policy. They are the people who don't have any background in education, but who are making decisions about what your child can learn in the public schools that you're paying for with your tax dollars. Like, those are the types of things that are really, really important to understand, because they make a big difference. And so as the political climate shifts, meaning people who are in office who want to see a certain status quo held up begin to make policy, they can change with no education degree behind them whatsoever. They can change what's put in front of our kids. They can change the rules. They can change what we can say, what we can't say, if we want to receive those free tax dollars. And we need them. Public education is public and it's free for everyone. So because of the people we put in office, they can make changes based on what they feel their constituents want. And when we make decisions as a people, not to go out to the midterm elections and not vote, and because it doesn't matter, and if our vote mattered, it then blah 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 blah. I know that's a whole nother show, girl. I'm sorry, but when we do things like that, it becomes very political, because what they do then is, with their political power, they make decisions about education that directly impact your child. And that's what they're doing right now. They're making political decisions that make themselves feel comfortable, so they don't have to take responsibility for any of what's going on in the country. The shift was going towards, hey, let's talk about a reckoning. Do we really need to talk about reparations? We really need to talk about public apologies? Do we really need to change policy? Nope. Because if we say it never happened and there was nothing wrong with it, we don't got to have those other conversations. And we're going to start by not even letting it be entered into the schools. And that's what they're doing. It is very political. And all I can say is to that is the next midterm election, that's coming up in another year or so, please vote in it and try to make sure that you are very well versed in what those people's stances on education are, because make no mistake about it, it is the politicians who are deciding what we teach.
I think you are 100% correct. And that's why I pose that question, because a lot of people don't, I don't know if they just don't know or they just don't comprehend how important those midterms elections are. It's wonderful to turn out in, droves to vote the next president in, but what about on your local level? Like, those are the elections that really matter. And those are the election that's really going to determine what happens with our children on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
And believe it or not, there, and you just said something that just resonated with me. If it's not we have a saying. I'm a licensed physical therapist assistant by trade, and there's a saying that we use in the medical field: if it's not documented, then it never happened, right?
Yep.
So think about that in terms of our children's education. If history is erased because people don't want to face it any longer, whether it's good, bad, ugly, indifferent, if it's erased, then it's almost like it never happened, because it's no longer put before our kids because it makes some people feel uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Right. So we have our work cut out to it. And to be quite honest, we need to hold our politicians to the highest standard as possible. But in order for us to do that, we have to do our jobs, and that is get ourselves educated and let our voices be known, because unfortunately our children don't have the voice to speak for themselves. So It's really our responsibility to be that voice for them.
Yeah, 100%.
You mentioned about the achievement gap, and there is some that would say that's a myth, right? What's your thoughts about that, and how does it make you feel when you hear that there is no, gap? There is no such thing, and everybody is on level footing. And I know you have heard it, because I have heard it, and I'm not in the education field, but there's a myth out there that everyone is on the same playing field. They have the same resources, all of that. So what's your thought process on that?
I think anybody who thinks, who actually has the audacity to say, everybody starts off with the same exact playing field, and all the resources are there, and everybody has an equal chance, has literally never been in a school. I mean, there's literally nothing else to say. They've not been in a school probably since they left. And if they have a young child, they probably drop their kid off at the door and say bye, and they know what they pour into their child. And so they're like, well, clearly, if I'm doing this for my child, then everybody else is doing it for their child as well. And that's just not true. I've worked primarily, the bulk of my educational experience has been in urban schools. I've worked at high performing urban schools. I've worked at frustratingly low performing urban schools. I've worked in different cities. I've actually, my last assignment that I just ended, I was at my first suburban school. And what I found there was it's not any different. They just have the problem on a smaller scale, but they have a whole bunch of resources to pour into the problem. So the kids who go to those schools, who are lucky enough to live in those districts, who go to those schools, the playing field they get brought up to the level of their peers faster. But there aren't a lot of us there. And so, those examples, those shining examples of like people like the narrative of like homeless to Harvard, those are great, right? Those are great individual stories. But for every homeless to Harvard, for every person who made it through, there's like literally 15, people who didn't. So you're sacrificing, and 15 is a classroom, right? So you want to play up and celebrate the one example of, they pull themselves up by their bootstraps. What about the other 15 kids that came to school with no bootstraps, because they came to school with no boots? So you want to tell me that all things being equal, they have no boots. So where are they supposed to pull exactly? Like, how does this work? So anybody who tells you that there's no achievement gap, they've clearly never been in a school. Not since they left. or they 100% drop their kid off at the door and just assume that, well, parents know to do this. I'm a parent, and I do this. So clearly everybody else is doing this too. And that's just not how it works. The achievement gap is very, very real. It requires a lot of time, commitment, effort, and resources to close it. And it's hard, even with time, effort, and resources. It is very, very difficult.
Yeah, and that is so true. And then on top of that, I really believe that it does take a village. It takes a village, and you just use a perfect example of that one person who was able to make it to Harvard or make it to, Princeton or any of those Ivy League schools. But it takes a lot. It takes a lot to get that child there. Let me ask you about, because you just made a comment, that some parents are proactive and they pour into their, children. Is there a specific age where parents should be concerned about literacy when it comes to their children? Is there a certain grade level? Because there's some parents that will say, you know what, my child is only 2, they can't even talk yet. Why should I, worry about reading to them? That's the teacher's job or whatever. So is there a certain age where parents need to start introducing literacy to their children?
100%. The day you come home from the hospital. No, literally, it's that early. And the part of that is because the people who make the policies, hence the politicians, have decided that all children have to be able to read and write at a certain level by a certain age. So I'm in Ohio, and in Ohio, we have what's called a 3rd grade reading guarantee. And a lot of states have implemented a 3rd or a 4th grade reading guarantee in some form or another, meaning they have decided that in addition to state tests, which all states test, every state has their own standardized tests. But in addition to standardized tests, they have a test where at a certain grade level, if you don't pass that test, you do not get to go on to the next grade. Usually it's 3rd or 4th grade, because policymakers or researchers have found that if a child does not read well by the cannot fluently read by the 3rd or 4th grade, their chances of graduating high school diminish significantly. It puts them on a trajectory. I'm sure people have heard about the prison to school pipeline, school to prison pipeline. Like all of those things began to come into play. So because 3rd or 4th grade is like that benchmark year, which, let me say, as an educator, I do not agree with. I think all children develop at their own pace. I wish, which is why I've again started doing my own thing. I wish we could pour into children and give each kid what they need to get to where they need to go in their own time. That is not what traditional education looks like. And so traditional education says 3rd grade, 4th grade, right? You have to hit those markers. And that being said, if you want your baby to be able to reach those markers as a parent, you have to start pouring into them from the time they come home from the hospital. The studies say that, students, people who are read to for just 20 minutes a day, hear, I think, something like 3 million words more than somebody who's not read to at all. So 20 minutes a day, a bedtime story here, a bedtime story there, can significantly impact what your child comes to school ready to do. And let me clarify that a little bit. So you can say, my kid will learn when they go to school. They're bright. I know my kid is smart, and I don't have time to spend, teaching letter sounds and reading books. And, I work, and I'm a single parent, and I'm this and I'm that, or we both work and we're tired. Okay, fine. But I need you to understand that in most kindergartens, the expectation is at this point, they want kindergartners leaving kindergarten. They want 5-year-olds to leave kindergarten and be able to read. They expect, in order for that to happen, that they pretty much come in knowing the alphabet and most of their sounds. So if you're waiting till kindergarten to introduce all the letters and the sounds to your baby is behind. If you are waiting till kindergarten to make sure your kids can count to 10, 15, that they have one-to-one correspondence, meaning if you say 2, they know to put up 1, 2 fingers. Like if you're waiting for the kindergarten teacher to teach that, and if you think they're getting a nap time and cookies and milk, no, that's not what kindergarten looks like anymore. And what's going to end up happening is they're going to call you in probably in March and say, Mrs. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so, we really think juniors should do kindergarten again. And then you're hurt. Like, my baby? Why does my baby have to do kindergarten again? My baby is smart. I know my baby is smart. And your baby really might be smart. But your baby did not get the probably 2 years of preschool, Head Start, whatever else everybody else got. So those kids all came in and they know how to read. They know their alphabet. They know the sounds. They can write their name. They know their color. Like, so all the stuff that we used to learn in kindergarten, they didn't know. And you already almost are expected to know when you get there. So they're ready for the next thing, the thing that the policymakers have determined that it's important for them to know. So you can definitely feel like that. You can say, I'll take my baby's sweet time, and I don't have the time to do this. I don't have time to do that. I just need people to understand. And that may really be your prerogative. And truly, honestly, if you're not going to keep your baby in traditional school, there is nothing wrong with following their lead. There are plenty of educational theories that say that children shouldn't be forced to learn how to read at age 5 because developmentally they're not ready. And some kids are not. And so, but if that's the path you want to take, you have to be prepared to move a little bit differently and accept some of the consequences that are going to happen if you're saying, well, I'm going to let the school handle it, because the school's going to handle it the way that the policymakers say they have to handle it. And they're all about, I'm looking at your baby. I'm already projecting 3 years from now, will they be able to pass this state test in 3rd grade? And I know that my job is contingent upon whether or not your baby can pass this test. So if I'm looking at your baby in kindergarten and I know he don't know his letters, he can't go to 1st grade, and you might be mad at me, but I like my job and my benefits. And so your baby has to be retained. And it's that you have to understand the system. You really have to understand the system. Pour into your children beginning when you bring them home from the hospital. Read to them 20 minutes a day. The things that you think kindergarten is supposed to teach them, they are supposed to learn before they get there now. And so that's it. And if you understand that, you will understand that it is really worth your time and the effort and the commitment to do that work before they get into kindergarten.
And that is so true. And I'm so glad that you really took the time to break that down. And I can remember, my mother poured into me. I was her oldest daughter, and I'm 43. Mm-hmm. I'm 43 years old. But what I can say is that she literally took her time and she poured into me so much to where I was too advanced for Head Start. I barely made it to kindergarten because they said I was too advanced. Mm-hmm. And I took her example and poured into my children the exact same way. My son is 20, he'll be 22 in November. My daughter just graduated high school, and they were too advanced for preschool and head start. But I said all that to say this: as parents, we have to make sure that we hold ourselves responsible for the beginning stages of our children's education. And we should not expect for the school systems or whoever else, the daycare teachers, which is all fine and good, because if you're leaving your children in a structured environment, I hope you would expect them to have some type of a structure as far as learning. But ultimately, as parents, we have to hold ourselves responsible. And I was a parent that, summers did not mean you just sat around and you just played video games. We were at the library once a week. They had to check out books once a week. We read. They had to write me book reports. They had fun, but summers was not a time for them to just sit around and do nothing, because I think it's very important to keep their minds as sharp as possible. So what's your thoughts on, because there's some that believe, it's summer. They don't work the whole 9 months. They really, really deserve that time off to do nothing. What's your thoughts on that?
So I'm just going to be 100% real. Like, if you are going to have your child in traditional public school from kindergarten all the way through 12, you can't do that. Summer slide is real. And that, I mean, and every, as a teacher, the first month and a half is not me teaching any new content. I'm reviewing everything they learned the previous school year so that I can begin to introduce new concepts to them. And it goes fast. Some years you have a really smart class, and smart meaning they didn't lose as much. And so you can go a little bit faster. Some years you cover more curriculum than others because the kids retained more. On my Facebook page, Just Like Me Presents on Facebook and Instagram, we do a Monday morning tip every week that has something. This summer, the focus was what can you do over the summer? So I gave examples of like how you can incorporate math and, over the summer when you go to a restaurant, like what games you can play, how to teach place value, playing with coins in your purse. What activities can you do with reading over the summer that don't feel like reading? Because, and like just different 2-minute videos that, what can you do quickly with your kid over the summer every week that, makes that learning continue, because it is important. And summer slide is very real. And if you do let them have that time off because you fundamentally believe, you know what, my kid does need a break and they don't need to learn. And that's a mindset. And that's 100% fine if that's your mindset. Again, as long as you are willing to put your child in a different type of school. If your kid is going to a traditional public school or a traditional private school, then be prepared to have some difficulties with have some issues with your kid, first quarter when school starts back, and be real frustrated. Like, you knew this last year. What do you mean you can't multiply? You knew this. Like, yeah, they did, but they just spent 3 months not doing it. And when when there's no repetition, when you don't do things over and over like that, that's how we retain. That's how. And our brains make connections so that we can, access information that we have learned. When you first learn a skill, so a new skill you learn at the beginning of the end of the school year, because if you don't practice that over and over and over again, that connection in your brain that teaches you how to take the new information and connect it to the old information, that's a bridge. If you don't use that bridge for 3 months, that bridge like disappears. And then you have to rebuild that bridge when you come back to school. So if you do nothing over the summer, all those bridges that were brand new, that didn't have time to solidify, they're going to disappear. And it's like you're going to be starting over from scratch. So definitely doing things over the summer is important. Making sure that you keep those active connections going. Just Like Me Presents on Facebook. We have weekly tips if you want to stop by and check out the videos. They're really easy, super simple. Don't take a lot of time, but they will help with that summer slide.
I love that. And then on top of that, to add a pandemic to the mix. So that's a whole nother conversation. Yes. Right there. But I mean, it has really been a learning moment and a teachable moment for all of us. I just thank God that my daughter is out of high school, finally going off to college, because these past couple of years has been rough. Mm-hmm. So my hat's off to you educators and parents out there still in the trenches with your children. God bless you. God bless you. If you are just joining us, we are talking to Michelle Persons, who has over 20 years of education experience. And as you can tell just by sitting here listening to her, she's extremely passionate about making sure that our children have a good, solid foundation and making sure that they are starting off on the right foot. So we're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We're going to let you know exactly how to get in contact with Michelle Persons, and I'm going to introduce you to her website as well. So we are not quite done. We have a little bit more left, so don't go anywhere. Stay tuned.
Join the Easy Way movement. Visit EasyWayWall.com to check out the Easy Way Wall of Fame. Easy Way influencers are golden, and you are chosen.
going on? What's going on? It's your man, Eric Zuli. I'm an international commercial Axe body spray star. I've done films. I'm on Amazon Prime right now. And I built my own social network platform. We have 300 million people that we reach on our network. And I'm a man of God. And I'm telling you right now, man, where do you need to be? Oh, yeah, that's it. Keever's Place. You gotta go to Keever's Place. You gotta watch Keever's Place. You gotta hang out in Keever's Place. It's about Keever. You hang out in Keever's Place, the easy way.
And welcome back to Keever's Place, the Keever Murdoch Show and Podcast. If you're just joining us, we are talking to Michelle Person. We are having a wonderful discussion about education, adversity in education, the achievement gap, and how soon we think you should introduce literacy to your children. So I am so excited to have you here, Michelle. Thank you so much for just dropping all of those wonderful nuggets.
Oh, no problem. That's what I do.
Yeah, we can tell. I definitely wanted to bring up your website because I think it's very important for our viewers to not only know how to get in contact with you, but to also see the various resources that you have on your website. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to put her website actually up on the screen before I take you through it very briefly. You can visit her at www.justlikemepresents.com. Again, that's www.justlikemepresents.com. And when you click on her website, it has information about webinars, which we're going to talk about briefly right there, about various products that they have. But I wanted to show you, if you are not sure on how to get your children started, you can click on their shop tab. And these are all of the books right here that Michelle has authored. So these are great resources for you to get. And as you can see, the books are not crazy expensive. The majority of them are $10. So these are wonderful books for you to introduce to your children to get them started. But not only does she have books, she has other books that she stands behind and backs as well. So you can go to JLM Picks, and these are more resources for you. So if you don't know where to start, and also get books, and we were talking about diversity earlier, and let's be honest, sometimes it's very hard to find books that looks like us. So we have no excuses. She has a plethora of books right here that your children, your grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews will be able to relate to. So definitely check her out at justlikmepresents.com. Subscribe to her newsletter. And if you have any questions about anything, I'm pretty sure that if you reach out to her, she'd be more than happy to help you in any way possible.
Definitely, 100%.
Awesome. Webinars. Before we pull up your other information, I know that you do offer webinars to help parents as well. So tell us a little bit more about your webinars.
So the webinar that you saw on the Just Like Me Presents page is a webinar that explains our new product, Meanwhile in Africa. And Meanwhile in Africa is our new social studies curriculum, particularly for students in grades K through 5. And it is to give students a more well-rounded, factual view of history, that is more engaging than the ones they typically receive in traditional public school. So that webinar just walks you through the parts of the program, why the program is important, how the program is used, and why you should consider it for your child as a supplement to what they're doing in school. Other programs and professional developments that we do workshops, meet the author workshops where students get to come in close personal contact with an author. They can ask questions. We talk about what it means to be an author. We do a lot of programming and with parents who at that age, that 3rd, 4th grade, because there are certain things you need to know and practice to be able to pass those very important tests that we talked about earlier. So one of the things that we definitely talk about is how to best support practicing comprehension at home, how to support writing at home. Because most of these tests, if you cannot write just as fluently as you read, you're not going to pass the test. Writing has become a huge component on state tests. And if your kid cannot put together a coherent paragraph with a clear opening and beginning, and has some details that they pull directly from the text, they're not going to pass that test. And I'm saying a paragraph is being polite. They want to see as early as third grade a kid be able to put together 3 paragraphs, which again I think is, my own personal opinion, is ridiculous. But that is the expectation. And so and so if you don't understand what these look fors are, then you don't know how to support your child at home. So we do a lot of work with parents, family workshops behind literacy. There are Meanwhile in Africa workshops as well. Meanwhile in Africa not only pushes the social studies, our history, it also talks about entrepreneurship. How do we take the ingenuity and the creativeness and the inventions that we don't often hear about but are there, and take those lessons and apply them to being global citizens in the 21st century. And so every Meanwhile in Africa unit also has an entrepreneurship a focus. So we're connecting what our history and our past, and we are connecting it to what we want our futures to be. So we have workshops around that. And we also have workshops for teachers as well. Like, what does it mean to have a culturally responsive classroom? What does it mean to be diverse in your teaching? And so we provide those types of workshops as well.
And I know that we've spoken a lot about literacy, but you also have math programs too for parents and children.
Math was actually, I hate math. I don't I tell people all the time jokingly, but I'm dead serious. Like, I don't like after 5th grade. Yeah, I'm not teaching after 5th grade because the math becomes too hard for me. But I'm a really good math teacher. And that is because as a math teacher, I understand how to teach it the way in which I wish I had been taught. And I am a Teach for America teacher. I am a former KIPP teacher. KIPP, the Knowledge is Power program, is in many, many states across the country. It's probably the most popular charter school network with the most successful results. And we teach math a very specific way in KIPP, and everything is set to a song or with a story. And so once I left KIPP, I took what I learned to every school that I've ever been at since then. And any kid who's ever had me sings their multiplication facts. They know how, division is not a problem. They can do their fractions. Like we do that. And so what I did was I packaged the lessons essentially that I would teach my classes, and I put them together so that parents can use them as well. So we also have a math program that's on the website.
I love it. I love it. How can our viewers get in contact with you?
Info at Just Like Me Presents is a great email address. You can join our Facebook group, Just Like Me Presents, on Facebook. The group is where people go to find extra tips, and we share different resources. Our page is on Facebook as well, and Just Like Me Presents on Instagram.
So I'm going to drop your email address, info at Just Like Me Presents. So if you have any questions, about education, what you can do, how to get in contact with Michelle, how to get her resources, you can definitely email her. You can reach her on Facebook and Instagram at Just Like Me Presents. And of course, her website, again, www.justlikemepresents.com.
And I would definitely say go to the website and join and subscribe to the newsletter. That's a great way to get lots of different tips, monthly updates. We have our woke podcast regarding woke, rewriting our children's education is launching in September, and the whole thing is all about how do we rewrite education so that it works for our children. And they can experience success. And so, there'll be, we have great people coming on to give tidbits, to give supports, to give resources, so that parents can take ownership over their kids' learning, especially since most people don't have the resources to not participate in traditional public education. So when I'm saying all these things about, well, if you're going to be in traditional public education, trust me, I recognize I have 3 children, and my 2 oldest participate and are currently participating in traditional public education. And so what I do is I want to make sure that I'm providing resources that we can supplement, because there are definitely things that traditional public education lacks. And so that's where Just Like Me Presents comes in. And that's where Regarding Woke, rewriting our children's education, it comes in to give us those, to make sure that their experiences are well-rounded, and to make sure that they have every tool they need. When we say, like, you see your babies are pretty much gone, right? You got one already out. You got one who just graduated. We got to make sure we're giving them the tools they need, so when they say bye, they are ready, that they can thrive independent of us. And so that's what we're doing.
And not only that, set them up to where they can get, if not a free college education, as close to free as possible. Because what I've instilled in my children are, you all are too smart to have to pay for college. And I thank God that they had scholarships, and they are going to, my son went to a very prestigious military school, and my daughter is going to a wonderful school as well. And I thank God that, you know, the majority of their education was paid for through scholarships. So it pays to start your children off early, because it saves, hopefully, in the long run for you. So definitely. I'm a huge advocate. Set them babies up for success from day one. Once they come out the womb, I say before they come out the womb, because studies have shown that once you are reading to them when they are in the womb, you're playing music for them. Not only are they getting used to your voice, but they are absorbing all of that. So I am here for it all.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It has been an honor to have you. I would love to have you come back, especially once your podcast launches. If you find where we have been of value to you, I would love to have you back, because I really feel as if the information and resources that you have, our audience, especially since school is starting back in a month?
Yep.
A month or so?
And that's why, about a month and a half. And that's the whole point. We want to make sure that we're launched and ready to go, so that parents have this, especially as, again, the politicians, many states, they are trying very hard to make sure that when these babies go back to school, this information is not available. So we are working double time to make sure that we are ready to launch, so that if your state is one of these states that is banning critical race theory and refusing to teach the real history of our country, and you won't let anybody, then you need these tips. You need to follow, you need to stay up, get the updates, subscribe to the newsletter, so that when this information comes out, if the traditional public school systems are being told that they can't teach it, that does not mean that your baby doesn't get a chance to learn it. Exactly.
And this is the time to be proactive right now.
We
don't need to be reactive. We need to be proactive as much as possible. So thank you again. I am going to give you the floor for any final words that maybe you wanted to say we didn't cover. So any final words you would like to leave with our viewers tonight, the floor is yours.
Oh, I appreciate that. I just want to say that, always understand that you are your child's first teacher. And you cannot give it to the schools and think that they have your students' best interest at heart. A lot of teachers do, a lot of principals do, but they are parts of a very broken system. And so you have to always remember that in figuring out how to best educate your child. I was a great teacher. I think so. I've known better. I wasn't the bestest. But I was a strong teacher, but I could only do what my district, what my principal, what the law said I was able to do. And so it is really, really important that we as parents understand the law. It's really important as parents that we understand the forces that are acting on our schools that make it really hard for our children to get everything that they need. So it's really up on us to make sure that we're aware of what the schools are giving, and then we are supplementing at home. And Just Like Me Presents is a great supplement. I'm always looking for tips and free resources. And again, our podcast, Regarding Woke, re-educating or rewriting our children's education, it's going to be nothing but making sure that you have the resources you need to prepare your students for the world they are going to inherit.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. Well said. If you would like to get in contact with Michelle, definitely visit her website. Again, it's www.justlikemepresents.com. She has a plethora of information and resources on her website. So definitely get in contact with her. So thank you so much again. It was truly a pleasure, and you're welcome back to Keever's Place, the Keever Murder Show, anytime.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great night.
You too. All right, ladies and gentlemen, listen, y'all have gotten the information. She has dropped so many nuggets. And like I stated earlier, we have no excuses to make sure that we are armed. We are armed with the most resources that we have to set our children up for success. So if you have enjoyed her, definitely reach out to her. As I stated, if you would like to be a guest on our show, we are taking bookings for season 3, which will start in September. So if you would like to be a guest on our show, definitely reach out to us. You can visit our booking site at tinyurl.com/Keever's Place Booking. Again, that's tinyurl.com/Keever's Place Booking. So thank you again for watching Keever's Place, the Keever Murdoch Show and Podcast. We are greatly appreciative of you and your support. So until next time, family, let's continue to share, connect, and glow, because we understand that building our network also builds our net worth. So thank you again for watching. We'll see you next Thursday night, same channel at Keever's Place, same time, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until then, peace and blessings. Good night.
Thank you for watching Keever's Place, the Keever Murdoch Show and Podcast. Tune in every Thursday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Keever's Place. To be a guest on our show, text the word guest to 803-368-3030 or visit us at tinyurl.com/Keever's Place Booking. And watch us on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire as we're broadcasting in more than 60 million homes worldwide.